We'll start at exactly 7 p.m. Please, that's in a minute. Hello and welcome to the Alan Hub channel. My name is Dr. Chidiebere Joe. Today, I'm having a conversation with my postgraduate students of the River State University. I think a lot of people know that's where I work. And if you're there, can you please leave a message? Can you drop a comment to say I'm here? I'm using won't allow me see you, but I believe that you can see me. If you can hear me clearly, just leave a message. I'll be able to see it. It's important that I know that people are out there watching. Thank you. Thank you, Grace Alfred. Tony, thank you for joining. So this is a specialized class. It's for my postgraduate students, but I think anyone who finds this interesting can also join in. What do I want to do today? I want to share with my students, because we've already started this conversation as part of our work for the semester, how to document and reference using APA 6th edition. We've already talked about this. We are aware that there are newer editions of the APA, but for the River State University Faculty of Communication and Media Studies, the standard is the APA 6th edition. And today, I want to use this platform. I think it's a kind of experiment for me and for those who are in the class to see whether this mode of learning will be effective. We all know that this offers lots of opportunities. We can see graphics, we can engage, we can ask questions because we have the comment section. So let's see how this goes, and I trust that it will go well. Like I mentioned earlier, my name is Dr. Chidiebere Joe. I'm a lecturer at River State University. I'm a researcher. I'm also a mediapreneur. Ellen Hub Media is where I put to practice the things that I teach in class. So that's why we're here. So I would like to encourage everyone to please support what I'm doing by subscribing. We share a lot of content here, from news, entertainment, information, and so you can come back and look it up. But we also use the platform for educational content. We talk about research, we do things like this, we drop messages, we bring people, interview them, have like high-profile individuals in the States and outside the States, and we hope to expand and extend that platform even more. So everyone, you're welcome. If you haven't subscribed, this is the best time to do so. Please press the subscribe button, and that's all. It's free of charge, completely free of charge. But now to my students, I'd like to begin by asking you, how have you been? I'd like to know, are you well? How was work today? Do you have any gist for me? Quickly before we begin, Singapele Tony says hi. Hi back. Uchina Daily says he's here. I like to, okay, awesome. This is a confirmation right here. Clinton Wadu says, good evening, Doc. I can hear you. Thank you. Thank you for that feedback. But tell me, just drop a brief word, how you're doing. Are you okay? This is also a good time to just grab a bottle of water, or I don't think anybody drinks coffee by this time of the day, but if you do, something to just keep us engaged, because we're going to be here for, I hope to make it brief, but hopefully everything goes well. Okay, so let's jump into it. Let me pull up my slides now. Let's make this bigger. Okay, so the idea, let me take off the overlay as well. Okay, so like I said, we want to learn in practical terms what APA 6th edition is all about, documentation and referencing, and we've laid the groundwork in class. Today is just for me to show you and explain to you the things that are required of you. So we'll begin with the documentation part. When you prepare your document, according to APA 6th edition, these are the things that your supervisors, the faculty wants to see. The university, this is how they want your document to look. So take notes, and then you can come back, because this video will be on demand. You can always come back to look it up. Okay, so regarding your page layout, according to APA 6th edition, the first thing is the margin of your work. So if you're using, say, an A4, which is the standard, right? The margins, the borders should be 1 inch around. So from the top to where you begin writing or where you begin typing, from the left, the right, and then even the bottom should be 1 inch all around. Anything outside of this will not be accepted because, like I said, it's APA 6th edition. So 1 inch around the margins of your document. I know that a lot of people rely on people to type for them. So you want to tell them this as well, because if you bring a document that is 1.5 inch around the margins, or 2 inches around the margins, or 3 inches, it won't be accepted. Or anything less than 1 inch will also not be accepted. The second thing is page numbers are part of the header of the document, and it is aligned to the right. I'll show you exactly what I mean in a few minutes. And then regarding the font, your type style when you type, when you write, what is permitted under APA edition, especially for clarity and for your documents to be legible, Times New Roman or Arial. So what is recommended is once you begin typing out your document, once you want to start writing, just organize this layout so that you don't have to come back and make any adjustments and scatter everything. Once you're typing for you, tell them, don't use anything outside Times New Roman or Arial. It has to be 12 points, not 14, not 16, not 18, not 10, 12. And the reason is clear, for clarity and so that your document is legible. The page numbers align to the right at the header, and then the margin 1 inch round. If you have any questions, remember, you can pop it in the comments and I'll respond. Okay, so go to slide 3 now. About your title page. The title page is where you have, for instance, the title of your thesis or the title of your dissertation. This is what is required. No fanciness, no color, no drama, no flowery borders. All those things are not necessary. So the title of your work should be placed in the center of the paper, the center of the document. If you're using A4, right at the center. I will show you again in a few minutes. And then the author's name and institutional affiliation. That means your name and your institution should come immediately below the title, all in the center, right? And then there has to be a running head across all the entire document. So if you have like 350 pages or 500 pages or 400 pages or 200 pages or 100 pages, there has to be a running head. And I'll show you exactly, for those of us who don't know, what a running head is. So if the title of your thesis is very lengthy, such that the running head, it will run across the page, then you want to shorten it. Yeah, I'll show you again, like I said, in a few minutes. So you have like an abridged version of the title of your work that will run across all the pages on the running head. And I'll show you what a running head looks like shortly. The next one is your abstract, which is an entire summary of your work. Your abstract is usually the first thing that your supervisor or anybody reading your work, especially assessor, will need to know: what has this person done? What is this book about? What is the argument? What are the conclusions? What are the key points of this research? And these are the things expected. So the label abstract should be the middle of your document, just at the top right there. And then you don't need to bold it or underline it. You just say abstract. It's not in full caps. Just A should be in capital letters, and then small letters the rest. So title caps only. And then the content should not be more than 250 words and should not be less than 150. So between 150 and 250. These things I'm saying are really important. If you miss any point, it seems like it's very easy and I'm saying a lot of things, but it's really technical, which is why I'm also designing a guide for you, something you can just keep on your side. As you do your document, you can always refer to it quickly. But just in case you're not able to get the guide or it's a little bit cumbersome, you can always come back to these slides. They'll be available always on YouTube. And if you want a copy, I can also send those to you. Okay. Then regarding formatting, the abstract should be a single paragraph. One paragraph, not two paragraphs, without indentation, double spaced. And all of this, if you're using Word documents, you can immediately set it up, even as you set up your page layouts. Yeah. Again, just shortly, I'll show you what this looks like. Okay. Regarding the main body of your document, remember what we're discussing now is documentation. How the document, let me show you for instance. A thesis should look something like this, for instance, all bound or whatever, with hard copy, not in this version, but it should be like a book like this. So how it should look like is what we're describing. There has to be consistency all through the pages. We're laying out what is expected according to APA 6th edition. So your headings all through your work, whether it's literature review, methodology, or the subsections or subheadings should follow a particular pattern. Here it says use descriptive headings. So not words, descriptive headings. Anybody who sees it will know exactly what to expect in that particular section or subsection. Then the format for headings is bold and title case. In other words, only the first letter of each word should be capitalized. Paragraphs, every time you begin a new paragraph, it should be indented to the left 0.1 inches. Sometimes your system may be programmed to centimeters, you can change it to inches, or you can just do a conversion of 0.5 inches to centimeters and you get the right dimension. Typically, for those who rely on others to type, it's important that you remind them consistently, this is what is required according to my school. They may have their own styles, but you have to abide by this, because now that we're taking time to explain all of this, we want to achieve two things. We want to ensure that anybody who sees the document from FCM, Faculty of Communication Media Studies, will know exactly that they're from us. So if you do something else, nobody will bother reading your work. They'll just cast it aside. So from the moment you engage with your supervisor, you want to just make this the custom. The second part is, as people who are emerging as researchers, you're going to be publishing with other platforms, other journals, other organizations. It's important that you also respect their style. Remember, APA 6th edition is our style. Okay, regarding alignment, your document as you type, everything should be aligned to the left with a ragged right margin. In other words, not justified. You know how some people want to type and just for neatness, they will organize everything, there'll be straight format, everything organized. In the case of APA, no, you cannot justify. The right should be, a little scattered. And again, I'll show you, because some of these things, if we're just reading them out like this, you probably won't understand. Okay, so now this is a classic example of what we mean. If you can see it clearly, please let me know. I'll try to, let me see if I can make this bolder. Okay, great. So this is what we call the running head. The short title of your paper should be a part of your header. If you don't know what header is, please look it up on Word or any other, I think for most persons is Word. So a summarized version of the title of your work should run across. And once you set it, it will be there. It's not something that you have to do per page. Once you set it automatically, it will just show through. Like we mentioned earlier, page number should be aligned to the right and should appear across the entire document. We also talked about the head. So you can see here, title caps, R is in cap, M in capitals. But remember, it's in the middle, not to the left, not to the right. It is aligned to the middle of your document. And then as you can see here, we also mentioned that each paragraph should be left indented 0.5. And you can see here from here to here is 0.5. We also talked about the margin of your work should be 1 inch all around. So if you check from here to here, 1 inch, from top to the point here, 1 inch, from here to that point, 1 inch, and then even below 1 inch. Don't miss this. We talked about the title page, and as you can see here, the title of the work is in the middle of the page, followed by the name of the student and then the university. We talked about the abstract. You can see here, the abstract, the middle, double spaced, and then look at that thing I call a ragged right margin. The left is properly aligned and justified, but the right is ragged. In other words, it's not straight like this. So when you're writing your abstracts, these are the rules. And please, if at any point you miss anything, you can pull me back and I will explain. Let me see if there are comments here. Somebody here says, all right. Somebody says, doctor, the example is blur. Oh, I'm really sorry. Are you sure it's not from your... okay, well, somebody here says, I can see it. It may be because of your network. It's quite clear from where I'm sharing it. But like I said, if you want. In fact, I'll make this slide part of the guide that I'm giving you. So that way you can always refer to it. And if you have any questions, you can always reach me. Besides, what we're doing here is me fulfilling my obligation of ensuring that you were taught. The thing is, if you check online, there are different guides, all over the place. But it's important that you also pay attention to what we've shared here. Because remember, SDMS, we have the best of the best of the best lecturers in the world, and we are to the detail. SDMS, under the current leadership of Professor Richard Amadi, is really careful about laying the right foundations for our PG program. So things like referencing documentation are really, really important. So please. And apart from that, remember Professor J.B. Okoni is on the course, teaching you research qualitative methods, and then Professor Fred Amadi is teaching you quantitative methods. I don't want a situation, and these are my bosses, right? I don't want a situation where you go to them and then, they say, oh, and they hold you accountable, like, why didn't you do it twice? And you'll be like, Dr. Sarah, this is my evidence, right? I don't want to explain, tired. If you just ask me, did you or did you not produce evidence? Matter. Okay. Okay. Somebody says here, after zooming it became blurry. Oh, sorry. Okay, so we're out of the Zoom version. I hope you get to see it. Okay, don't worry. In the end, I think we can see it. I think they're just key things that we've shared here about the running head, how the heading should look like, how the margin should look like, just key details, and we can again go back to them every once in a while. And if you have any questions, you'll get the slides, of course, and you can always draw my attention to them. Like we said in class, everything about documentation is about having consistency and flow. So your document doesn't look scattered. There's a kind of style and flow with it. And it's really, really important that we get this, because once we get into the world of academics, these are some of the things that we encounter. I think it's part of our lifestyle as academics to do things according to a particular pattern. There are those who challenge this to say, oh, why don't we have our own style? Why don't we do our own things? But for now, we have to abide. Okay. All right. So we make progress now. There's just one thing I want to talk about referencing before we go into the main conversation about referencing. And this is part of documentation. So the label referencing, references comes at the end of your document, like we discussed in class. You finished your work, you're done with your in-text citation, and then in the end, you have to list for us all the sources that you cited, and that section is called references. So like the abstract, the label references is placed at the top of a new page after the main body of the paper. Regarding formatting, the sources are listed in the paper in alphabetical order. So for instance, if you have Okon 2023, you have Amadi 2024, and you have Joe 2026, which one will come first? Yeah, automatically it's going to be Amadi, followed by Joe, followed by Okon, right? In that order, alphabetically, from A to Z. Okay, and then your references, the list should be, the first line should be flush to the left, and then subsequent lines indented. Again, I'll show you exactly what this means. So in Word, there's a section called hanging indent. Yeah, hanging indentation. Once you select it, it will automatically do this for you, so you don't have to stress. It's all there. And I know that lots of people already know about this. I'm just saying it for those who do not. And then when you reference, there's something called digital object identifier. This is like a code for each electronic document, especially for peer-reviewed journals or for platforms like Zotero, things that we'll talk about in the future. There's a particular way they want it presented in your reference list. So if a document doesn't have a DOI, the DOI is digital object identifier. If it doesn't have that DOI, and I'm sure you've seen it before, it's usually DOI .10 a generated code, right? If you don't have that, and you have to include the URL of your document, URL will be like, the things that we copy from online platforms. Yeah. If you don't have the DOI, you have to use your URL. Then you have to include retrieved from. In other words, the destination where you got that particular content from. And this is usually for web-based content, right? Okay, we make progress from here. There's also something I want to mention about tables as part of documentation, right? All tables are usually numbered. So you can't just copy or generate a table and leave it disorganized. We need to know what table comes first and then which one comes second. And then they have to be properly titled. They need to come with captions. And there are ways that this have to be done. So tables are labeled in order, table 1, table 2, table 3, and so on and so forth, right? For some other versions, they use other types of numerals. For this one, it's table 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on and so forth. And then titles and captions. Provide concise descriptive titles to your table. So once somebody sees it, they know exactly what the table is addressing, right? And then when you're sort of, as part of your conversation, you're writing, you want to say in table 1 or in table 2 or figure 3 or figure 4. That way they know immediately what you're talking about. And just okay, great. All right, I think I'm back. It's a network. Somebody says here they want to self-justify. Justification not important to allow information for research. No, no, no. That's what I said earlier. Let me just quickly address this question. So no, you're not to justify your document according to APA version. So normally you justify for that kind of neatness, but for APA, they're saying no. And remember, they're abiding by the rules. Yeah. So the question is that way is ragged at the right end because justification is not allowed. Okay. No, we're back. We're back. Who's this? They say, what happened? We're back. I'm sure it was the network, but we're back now. Okay. All right. So that's for table and figures. I'll show you examples just to illustrate what this is about. But before I do that, or just hold on 1 second, let me pull up the so that we don't forget. And then I can return to it later. Okay, so this is an example of how your table under APA 6th edition should look like. You have a table number, you have the table title, it has to be descriptive. This one reads number of boys and girls by age group. So once you see it, you know what to expect in the content section. And then there are column heads. Yeah, and there's a message here. This note, you include note to say, for instance, the source of. When it's not your own table, if you copied it from somewhere else and you're replicating it in your work for a reason, then you have to include the source as part of your in-text citation. So this is the table notes, and then this is the body of the table. You have the column heads, have the table body, have the table notes, and then the table title, the table number, and so on and so forth. So this is your standard table. As you can see, there are no vertical margins or vertical lines here, or horizontal, just again for clarity and style. So if you submit to your supervisor or any other person, somebody is really complaining. The illustrate, I can't. Is this like now? Hold on. Can you see it now? Can somebody please let me know? Is it clearer now? Are you sure it's not your network? Is there anybody who can see? Please leave a comment if you can see everything. Yeah, somebody is saying here network is not stable. So okay. And Sarah is saying it's clear now. Is anybody else with this? Okay, so I think it's a network issue, and this is one of the challenges we face with respect to technology, right? We're getting there. Try to see whether, and then maybe subsequently for parts of your house where the network is better, because it's really clear. Somebody here says it's clear. Another person says it's clear from my end. Yeah, there's somebody here. Dominic says I barely see anything here. I'm really sorry. It's your network. Try. I think some people need to call Elon Musk to help you. So nobody here says yes, my clearer now from my own end. Yeah, I think it's I can't see. Oh, I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry about this. But I think this style or mode of learning is really important because in class it's will be quite challenging for me to share these slides. We have the facilities, of course, we have everything in our class and everything, but there's this challenge with lighting. You know, if not, I can still bring this and just have the conversation in class. I'm really, really sorry. Oh, I'm really sorry. Really, really, really sorry about this. But I mean, we make progress, right? I hope that the plan is for this to remain online. So you can come back on YouTube to watch this again. And I'll also send you the resources in due time. So for now, just try to listen. Okay, so let me show you an example of a figure, an image, for instance. Okay, so these ones are for figures. So there's a difference between table and figures, remember. And like I said, every figure should be numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And you can see the consistency here with the page numbers. And then there has to be a descriptive title. And then this is the figure itself. And then there's the legend. So when you look at the coding here, the dark represent boys, and then the light ones girls. And then, of course, there's a figure note because, again, even though this is not a borrowed figure, it was still important to explain, break it down, so that anybody who encounters this particular figure, they really know what they're looking at. Everything about research writing is about clarity, justification, answering the why question. If you have a table or a figure as part of your work, you need to answer that quick question, why? It's really, really important that researchers and students know this. Anything you want to include in your work, you need to go back and say, can I do without this? Is this really, really important? Or are there better ways I can actually present this, right? You can imagine what figures and tables do for us. They make it really easy for us to understand stuff. You can imagine somebody writing out, trying to explain this in words. It's simpler because, as they say, pictures speak louder than words. And then there's an example of an image. Once again, it is properly labeled. There's a title here. This is the image itself. And then there are notes accompanying this image because describing the source of the image. And remember, you can see that the note is italicized. Everything about formatting that's been described here, that is what you must follow. Dr. Sarah Joe did not make these rules. This is APA 6th edition style. If you do anything outside of this, your work is rejected. Okay, so now we'll go back and begin to look at referencing itself. Let me. Okay, we'll begin with in-text citation. Is this still blurry? Okay, for some persons, network, everything about research. Yeah, I see somebody here is doing like a summary. Okay, so I need to know whether, can you see now? Can you see this at all? It's clear. Okay, great. So in-text citation. Remember in class, we made a distinction between in-text citation and the reference list. In-text citation is the one that you do as part of your writing. And there are rules to the game. There are rules to how you in-text cite. You don't just do it haphazardly. So these are the rules. If you're citing or making reference to a particular author, whether you're paraphrasing what they said, or you're summarizing what they said, or you're quoting what they said, these are the rules. Look at this example here. Joe, 2000, argues that. Joe, in bracket, 2000. That means you're referencing a work done by Joe. The year is 2000. Argues as follows. Another way of phrasing that is saying what the person said and then including the details at the end. So you see here, It's either you say Joe 2000 argues that, or you say the framing of Boko Haram mirrors Nigeria's political realities. By reading this, we know what Joe said. So what we want to see as part of your in-text citation is who said it, being Joe, the year it was said, and then the page number. We had conversations about quoting people, summarizing and paraphrasing. And we said, if you paraphrase, you need to include page number. If you quote, you need to include page number. But if you summarize, you don't necessarily have to include the page number. So in this case, as you can see, it is not a quote because you don't see the quotation marks. What we have here is a paraphrase sentence made by Joe in her work. So one author, you can see here. And then for two authors, you can see the examples right here. According to Parquet and Alpha 2019, Boko Haram has displaced over 2 million people. You can see here that because it's part of a sentence, we're not using the ampersand, we're using the correct spelling of and. But if you were to say what Alpha said before citing, then you introduce the bracket and then you use the ampersand sign. I hope this is clear. As part of a sentence, and A and D. If it's not part of the sentence, then you use the ampersand. There'll be a lot more examples as we make progress. Okay. There's another example that is really, really important. Sometimes we are citing what somebody else cited in their work. You're reading an article and somebody made reference to somebody else in the work. We call that secondary source. How do you do that in your own work if you want to borrow that particular part of the text? You reference the work that the person you cite that secondary source that is mentioned in the work, but you also include this phraseology here as cited in the work that you're reading. So let's say it's A and B. The work I'm reading is A, right? But A cited somebody else called B. When you're doing your in-text citation, you say B as cited in A, because that's exactly what happened, right? You're reading A, but A cited B. So if you're going to include their work, you have to reverse it and talk about the person who was originally cited and talk about the place where you saw the work. So Taylor 2007 as cited in Jones and Chen 2015. There's another way of doing that too, as you can see here. You can say Taylor in bracket 2007 as cited in Jones and Chen 2015. So it's virtually the same thing. I think for secondary sources, we encourage researchers to always find the original work and cite directly. But if it's not possible for you to find that original work and you have to rely on this secondary one, then you have to do it this way. I know that for some persons, it's a little bit, oh, I'm not getting it, don't worry. Once you start writing and applying the rules, you see how easy it is. Sometimes you read people's work and you don't quite see, they're making all these arguments, they're making these bold claims, and you don't know where they're getting it from, you know? And to think about some of the things we shared in class, it's impossible for you to just throw a bold claim there without telling us where you got it. It's critical, these things that we're learning, not just for this class, but for your journey as an academic. And then think about, even for your children, these lessons are really, really important. So please take them on and begin to practice. I think for our next lessons, more practice-based exercises where we're trying and bringing examples for you to juggle and reorganize, and then we'll begin to get the hang of it. But for now, just calm down, take it in. If you're feeling a bit confused, don't worry, you will get it in the end. I assure you, you'll get it in the end. Okay, so if it's an organization, the United Nations, we know it's an organization, a global organization. It could be any other organization, and you think that their work or what they have said or what they have published is relevant for your work, relevant enough for you to include it in your work, then you have to reference them, right? So you see here, the United Nations to 2023 reports that blah, 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 blah. Or you say what was reported, and then you include at the end, in brackets, United Nations 2023. This way, anybody picking up the work, and remember, for everything that you cite in your work, for every in-text citation, we want to see the full reference at the end of your work. Remember, in-text citation of your work. In-text citation is something you do within the body of your reference list is the one that you generate at the end of your writing. Okay, let me quickly address this question. It says, so in what instance do you use figures instead of tables? I think it's all about presentation and the kind of data you're working with, right? It's all about what is best fit for that situation. What I encourage researchers or students to do is to put yourself or get some other persons to read your work and say, well, if you use a figure to describe it and people can't really get the message, then you want to use a table. And then if you use a table, it's not clear enough, you will consider a figure or even an image. But you also cannot litter your entire piece of work with tables. There are some things that just fit into tables, right? Numbers work well. Like if those numbers are really, really important, you want to put them, but in a way that will make sense and in a way that won't be cumbersome. But figures can also bring like a visual presentation of your numbers in ways that are memorable, right? In ways that people can always think about. Because now, for instance, technology and all that, you can play with colors, you can play with different types of charts. There are smart charts. If you go on Word, there are different tabs that can help you make sense. So my advice would be for you to explore, but use them sparsely as well. Use them carefully, creatively, intelligently. And it's not for you to dump the table. Sometimes there are some persons where you go to defend your work, they will look at your table. Some people can actually read numbers and they will take you up on those numbers. Or you present a figure that doesn't represent what's in your work. I've seen those kind of things happen sometimes. And then you'll be pissed. So be sure that not only do you condense words into those tables and figures, but that you also know what they represent and what they mean. And remember, as part of your work, this is like a bonus tip. You don't just drop a table and you move on. No. The table is to make text easy, but you have to explain as part of your work what those figures mean and what those tables mean. What are the key points you're trying to tell us? It's really, really, really important. And I'm sure that our two senior researchers, Professor J.B. Okon and Professor Fred Amadi, will highlight more and more how we use this. Okay. Let's see this one. Are there any possible limitations in secondary sources, especially when the content idea is not true, authentic, or cited by the primary source? Of course, there are issues. I'll tell you something that I experienced today. So I'm writing this paper for the IAMCR. The deadline is fast approaching. So I'm looking up all this literature. And then I saw one, and in this, it's supposed to be a secondary source. But I said, no, my training is, even if I see a secondary source being used in a particular article and it made great sense, I always go back to see how I can look for the original, document to see it for myself. And this particular author cited, let's say, for instance, they said Joe and Joe 2024. But when I went to the reference and I got the entire piece of work and I went online to search for it, I thought that it wasn't Joe and Joe, it was just Joe. I don't know whether that makes sense. So it wasn't two authors that did the work, it was just one author. Some persons would say it was a typo. Some persons would say it was a mistake or an oversight. In research, you can't afford. You have to be sure what you cite, because you can't tell your supervisor or the people assessing your work that, oh, you can imagine if the person who was there and you're giving credit to somebody else for the person's work. The person will be like, who is this second Joe that I'm not aware of? So you want to double check. Remember, secondary citation is only when it's impossible to find the work. If you can find it, you better go read it and cite it as the original text, because mistakes may happen. Yeah. What the argument that was made in this work I was reading wasn't bad. It was just that the citation was wrong. So I immediately corrected it. That's another bonus. I hope I've been able to help you there. There's another question here. It says, discussing the table is not same as table reading. I don't quite get your. No. So I think what you mean here, table reading, is when people come and they are and they are saying word to word what's on the table. So please, and I know that as part of your work, as part of your research course, you're going to be taught this. There's a reason that you use a table. There's something you want to show us that is really important, right? There are reasons, for instance, people use maps. And there are reasons people use figures and colors to signify things. You want to draw attention to something. So that thing that is most important to your work, you want to discuss it by your research. Let me give a classic example. So if you do a research about boys and girls, and then there's a shocking or surprising finding that girls are more intelligent than boys in terms of maybe statistics for JAMB or whatever. That's something you have to not only put on your table or your figure, because of course image will work in this context, but you also want to tell us, you want to highlight that point and discuss it with respect to your research. Because you see, anything that is not important and is not tied to your work in terms of enhancing your contribution or your methodology or the key points or even the gap of your study, then it's not necessary. Sometimes people like to introduce tables to show like frequencies. I think at the end of the day, it's just to simplify text for people. But the key points, the important things in that figure that you want us to know, you have to talk about it. You can't just stand before people and read word for word what's on your table. Oh, there were 13 boys who took the exam, and then there were 12 girls who took the exam, and then one boy failed and 2 girls passed. No, that will be table reading. That's not what we want to. That is not our interest at this point. We want to know, why does this particular data matter? What did you find out with respect to these numbers that are necessary for us to know? Okay. Let's see if there are any other. Okay, great. I hope I've been able to help you there. But if I did not, you can, circle back and we can look into this. Let's make progress now. And if the plan is to have this session for 1 hour and we have 18 minutes into 1 hour, if at 1 hour you're beginning to feel tired or dizzy or you have prior engagements, I would like you to please leave a comment and then we can continue. If not, the standard lecture hours is 2 hours. I can go for another hour, but we'll make progress, right? But remember, leave a comment and then I'll leave word now. Where is he? I want to leave a message for Captain. Captain, can you please help me snap attendance? Captain Dominic, please ensure you do attendance for me. I'd like to know everyone, even though it will be here. I don't want people sneaking in later. I want to know people who are actually here live to participate in the class, because that will be my attendance sheet. I will know the rules, right? No attendance, no exam. Okay, great. Okay, so now let's go into specifics. What are the kind of things that you reference and how we're supposed to do them? What are the rules? We've talked about intake citation, we've talked about documentation. Now we're talking about specific resources that we include in our work. So when we want to reference a book, or the general guide for referencing a book is you write the author's name. If there are 2 of them, you include an ampersand and then a year of publication, the title of the book in italics, location of publication, and publisher. An example is this one, Joe, SC. And remember, Joe, comma, not Joe, full stop. Joe, comma, S, full stop, or dot, C, dot, and Walaka, comma, T, and so on and so forth. Yeah. Then the year of publication is 2024 in brackets, followed by a full stop. Some persons would imagine, oh, all this full stop, all this comma, it doesn't matter. Look, there's something about style. If you're following a particular style, you have to, it's just like taking medicine, right? If the doctor says 2 morning, 2 nights, 2 in the evening, there's a reason they said that. So it will be really, really dangerous if you go ahead and pack 5. Or you take the 6 at once to say, since they said 6, let me just take all at once. No, you could die. That's the same thing we reference it. As it is prescribed here, those are the things that you follow word for word, no errors. Yeah. I know that some persons already know this and they are experts, but please still pay attention. You may still learn 1 or 2 things. Right? So 2024 in brackets, full stop, and then we see the title of the book. Mastering APA 6th edition reference. Mastering APA 6th is in italics. It is italicized. And then the location of publication is Port Harcourt, and the publisher is Elan Hall. Simple. Very simple. And all of this you can find in any book. You can just open the first page or the back page of the book and you see all the details and you fill this in. But even more interestingly, there are softwares and platforms online that can help you do this automatically. You just feed in the information and boom. But sometimes, rather than go ahead to start typing it in or trying to generate it automatically, it's also good practice for you to begin to know how to do things yourself. There are different platforms, there are softwares that can help you do this if you just feed in the right information. Or if the information is already or the resource is online, they can immediately generate it for you. All you have to do is go there, select APA 6th edition, and boom, copy, paste in your work. Easy peasy. But this is how it should look like. And even after doing that, because I found from experience, sometimes I use, for instance, Cite for Me. And then in the course of my work, if I made the error, or maybe I didn't read what the style that the journal or whatever, publishers or whatever prescribed. If, for instance, I was using Arial and they said, no, we must use Times New Roman. And you go back and you change it for some, especially for Word, it will just change everything. So you have to go back and make sure that the fonts are not changed and the settings are not changed. I'll give you an example. So I like to use Arial Narrow for my writing. But if I was using Times New Roman to type and I go back and I just say Arial, it will change all my italicized text into normal text. That means I have to go back one by one. That's important. That's why it's important for you to organize your document from the get-go, so you don't have this kind of errors or duplication of work, going back to start highlighting and changing to italics, capital letters, or whatever. So it's important that you get it right. So this is what it is for books. Yeah. Okay, somebody is asking here, Ma, is it necessary to put in brackets? In barracks? Barracks? I think he meant or she meant brackets, the year of publication. Yes, as it is described here, this is a template. You can't guess this. You can't do your own version. This is the approved version. It's copy and paste. That's the truth. That's why I'm working hard to get this comprehensive guide to give everybody. So as you're doing your work, you're comparing it to make sure I'm doing it the right way. In fact, two things that you must read before you submit. Right? You want to make sure your documentation is in order as described. And then you want to read your abstracts and your references. Because if you get those two wrong, some persons may not have the time, they are busy to read your work. Oh, they want to be sure that at least this one spends the time. And you know that people who have submitted this work, they've done the work. They've done the masters, they've done the PhD, they've studied and they write, like writing is their life. So they know the small tricks may include and they know where to catch you because they have experienced it. So don't get trapped. Let's go. This person is saying, let's see. Please, Ma, can we have the material after the class? It's a great, I've already said to be available. Yeah. So that's done. Okay. I see the other ones here are just attendance. Okay. If you have questions, remember, just pop it up and I'll take a look. Another person has a question here. Doctor, if there are two authors, do you add a comma after the initial full stop? I'm not sure I understand this, but remember, if there are two authors, this is what you do. Author one and the person's initials. If the person doesn't have two, you have to include all the initials. And the ampersand version of and then the second author, full stop, in brackets, year of publication, full stop, and so on and so forth. If it's one author, then you don't need an ampersand, right? It's quite clear here. The use of ampersand, you always required, yes, for your reference list when you have more than one author. Another question, yes, you can have the material. You will have the material. It's going to be part of the guide that I'm laying out for the course. So don't worry, you get it. When there are two authors, yes, it is required. It is a must. Yeah, it's a must. Okay, we make progress. Okay, so we know that apart from standard books, we also have what we call now ebooks, electronic books, books that you find online, PDFs and stuff like that. And this is the rule. Author, Author 1, author 2, that's if there are 2 authors. If it's only 1 author, then it's 1 author. The year of publication, in bracket, title of the book, italicized, location of publication, publisher. Or author 1, author 2, year of publication, title of the book. If it's an edited, if it's a book that's in edition, so there are some books you have 2nd edition, 3rd edition, 5th edition, 6th edition, then you have to list the title of the edition in Italy as well, and then the DOI or the place you retrieved it from. Remember, you can't just copy the URL and paste there. You have to include this retrieved from, so, because your reference is something that people will read, right? And the URL sometimes comes with this prompting. It's a link that people can just click and immediately they can go there to see where you work if your work is online. So it's important that you include it so that people are sure that you actually saw this text and it's not something that you can fake. So this is the version. So just an example here, Jones AG and Chen B, referencing the guide for students. 2nd edition, as you can see, 2nd edition is italicized, the title of the work is italicized, and then you have the DOI. The DOI is present, so you don't need the URL. I'm sure that's clear. Any questions? Let me know. Okay. Now, sometimes it's not the entire book that you're referencing. You didn't read the entire book. You just a particular chapter. That's all you read. There's a guide for that as well. Book chapter. So maybe a book of say 20 chapters. You read only chapter 3. A book of 10 chapters. You did your work. What you really needed and you read was just chapter 2. There's a way for you to reference that as well. And this is it. You put the name of the author and or the names of the author, there are more than one, the year of publication in bracket, strategies for success. This is not italicized. This is the title of the chapter, right? And then you say in C. Taylor ed. This is the kind of book that was edited by other people, but different persons contributed to the book. And I know that you've seen lots of books like that. So they're usually written as edited by this and that, or edited by, in this case, T. Taylor. But when you open the book, the different chapters were written by different authors. So in this is an example of such a book. You have the authors of the chapter, the title of the chapter, and then you have where it is located, where this chapter is located. So in the original editors of the book work, and then the title of the book. As you can see, strategic use of comma, full stop, and so on and so forth, and you have to follow it through. And then you have, in describing the location, the chapter location is between pages 213 and 225. You have to include it. This is what helps anybody looking through your work to say, this is the title of this book. This is the chapter I read. They were written by so and so if there are 2 persons, but this is where you find them. So that, remember what we're discussing about referencing, we said we do this so that people can actually vet our work. We can actually contribute to knowledge. If you've written something really exciting and you said it's from this chapter, some persons may want to go verify or want to see it or read it for themselves to see whether they can make a different meaning. So it's important that we do that. And as usual, we include the location of publication and the publisher. This particular text is published in Melbourne, Australia, and then by the Monash University Press. I'll keep emphasizing, it's important that you remember and be calm about this. You will get guide for this, but it's important that we do this so that you know just how important, and for some persons, especially at the early stages, how complicated it is. You're going to write an exam around this. You're going to write your research for postgraduate, for PGD, and for masters. And then for some of you, you're going to go ahead and do your PhD as well. At that point, you already know everything. It's just like a refresher course. But I think it's more about the long-lasting effect of things like this that is important to me. You will write. You're going to publish. You're going to be amazing researchers around the world. We want to be sure that the right foundation is set for you. Okay. Let me quickly take this question before we make progress. So talking about e-materials and sources, and a researcher consider information and citations gotten from Google as worthy for academic writing. Okay, so on Google, there are lots of resources, different types. As part of the research class, qualitative, quantitative, I'm sure at some point when they're telling you about literature review, you're going to be shown different types of sources. But if that's something you'd like me to talk about I'd like you to leave a message. If I have a good audience of say up to 2030, I can quickly do that for you. And I think on my website, www.drjoe.com, I think I have a list of credible academic resources that you can go look up. Now, Google is both credible resources and junk. My advice is this. If it's by a renowned journal, if it's peer-reviewed, if it's reliable information that can be verified from other sources, then yes, you can include it in your work. But remember, on Google, there's something called Google Scholar. You want to explore that platform, and you see lots of resources that you can use. So you want to double-check the information and be sure. But remember, things like Wikipedia or gossip columns or people's opinion in newspapers, they don't quite count. You can depend to just lay foundation for your work. I mean, for newspaper opinion, for instance, what's happening in River State with all the drama, you can actually say, oh, this person made this kind of comment here, but those are not the core of your research, right? So you have to be really, really careful the kind of source you find on Google. For instance, I mean, you can go on Google and see a blog publish something. That's not really credible. There's some blogs that are really, really good. Ellen Hub is one, for instance. Even though we don't like to go by label blog, but yeah, it can also fit here, a blog plus. And we really vet our information as much as we can. So there are some, but you have to be quite selective. Yeah. For academic work, I would like to restrict it to books, e-books, verifiable sources, Google Scholar, and all the journals, amazing journals, littered on Google and other platforms. So yeah. Let's see, any other question? Okay, we make progress. So we've just finished learning about book chapters. I think the most important thing here is the fact that the title of the chapter is included, and then the book itself is mentioned, and then the part of the book where this chapter is located is also included. Remember, it's not one P, it is PP, and the reason for that is pages. If it's more than one page, it is double P. If it's one page, it's one P. It's been quite odd to have a chapter of a book that is just one page, but again, well, if it does happen, then it's one. Else, the standard is double P, showing the range where the chapter starts and where it ends. Okay, so let me take this question because it's quite important. For an online material, when we don't have location and publisher, what do we do? Remember, I haven't shown you how to cite online resources yet. I've shown you book, ebooks, and book chapter. So just be patient, we'll get there. Okay, in-text citation, please. When is can one, a all, and best can it be used? Okay, so there are clear rules for this. For the APA 6th edition, I think once you have more than okay, we'll get to that point. But I think it's if you have more than 5 authors, then is it all? Because I know that I use APA 7th edition a lot. So that's what I'm really familiar with. And if you have more than 3 authors, then it's from the first author, it's all. I think for APA, I'll verify and I'll get back to you on that one. Or maybe it's all part of our presentation today. Okay, so another source that we really use, and I mentioned just earlier, journals, academic journals, and we know what those are. There's a way to cite them as well. Remember, we've dealt with books, ebooks, book chapters, now journals. Okay, when it's a journal, the rules are slightly different because journals come with different sets of parameters. You have to talk about the name of the journal, the volume, the issue number, the page number, and so on and so forth. And that's the example we see here. So you write the name of the author, the initial of the author, authors, year in brackets, the title of the article. Every journal, will have a title. Every journal article, we have a title. And the journal itself will have its own title. That's the name of the journal. So in this case, the title of the article is published in the journal, and subtitle, if there is one. And remember, to include a subtitle, you have to use the column first. And then you include the title of the journal. That means the name of the journal itself. Journals are made up of maybe 20, 30, 10 articles, and so on and so forth. But you have to include the name of the journal at this point. And then the volume and issue number of the journal. Most journals come in different volumes, volume 1, volume 2, volume 10, depending on how many times it's published, and then they have issue numbers as well. So, and then you have the DOI information or the URL. So this is a classic example. This particular article was published by 2 persons, Lee S. and Seal, 2007, Learning to do Qualitative Data Analysis and Observational Study of Doctoral Work. This is the title, Learning to do Qualitative Data Analysis. That's the title of the article, and there's a subtitle, An Observational Study of Doctoral Work. And then Qualitative Health and Research, that is the title of the journal. And as you can see here, it is italicized. There's a volume number. The volume number is also italicized, but there's no issue number. If we were to have an issue number, it would be in brackets as illustrated here, and it won't be italicized. So what is italicized in the context of the journal is the title of the journal and the volume. The issue number is not. And then you have the page numbers, the pages, from where that particular article in the journal starts until where, just like a page, a book chapter, right? You have, but you won't put the PP. You won't put the PP. Remember, these things are technical. That's why I said you need a guide on your side to be sure that you're complying. I remember when I started my own journey, and I mean, the standard River State University is so high and beautiful, but I mean, I had my master's done in the UK and the PhD in the UK, so it was even 10 times tougher. And I didn't quite get it, but it was so like, it has to be. I said, I'm not waiting now. I've already received it. What's the problem for work? It was a whole lesson. It was a whole thing. But I think I'm happier for it now because I have more respect for people's work and I'm quite attentive. I'm the kind of person, I finish my work, I go and I read my references line, but just to make sure that I didn't spoil anything. I didn't spell somebody's name wrongly, it's really important. So in the end here, you put your URL or your DOI, and that's good. We are taking pains now to do this explanation and to show you and to convince you beyond reasonable doubt. Hey, when we are marking the exam, my eyes will open like this, looking. All right. Okay, let's make progress. I see a couple of questions there, but let's get to a particular point. Okay, so the next one is newspaper. Yeah, you can cite solid newspapers. I mean, for instance, the example we have here is of the New York Times, but we have newspapers of record like the Guardian, the Sun, and the Daily Times, the Leadership. These are the people who shape our understanding of what's happening in Nigeria. So yes, sometimes we have to rely on them. I mean, think about newspapers, they contain a lot. Okay, there are lots of solid information that you can find there. There are lots of reports that are published in papers. There are lots of data that are also replicated in papers. So sometimes you find yourself. And then even as a research source, right? That's your data source. If you're doing like a content analysis of newspapers or whatever, you still have to tell us. It's important that you know all of this. So sometimes that's your source. So it's important that you include it in your reference list. Now, how is it done? So if anybody is feeling tired, remember we are the 1 hour period is up. If you feel a little bit woozy, you can let me know. And then we can wrap up and continue some of the time. But if you can still take a few more minutes, that would be good. Okay. Something funny is really happening here, and this is really on a lighter note. I know that this is the class and all that, but sometimes somebody should please help me call my husband and ask him to stop distracting me, right? It's just making funny gestures, and it's not funny at all. I'm working. Okay, great. Okay, so back to what we're doing here. So for newspapers, what you do is the author, the initial, and remember, see the difference now. It's not just the year you include. You include the year, the month, and the date of publication. And for any standard newspaper, you can have all this information, right? Whether you find them online or you find them offline, it's available. Okay. Then the title of the article and the subtitle, if there's one. I want you to pay attention to the areas where there are the use that is italicized and the areas that are not, because these are the kind of things that will be graded in your work as part of saying, well, in terms of documentation, perfect. You have to read the truth. Okay, so the title of the magazine or the newspaper, the volume and issue number. There's some newspapers and magazines that have volume and issue numbers. So if you have those, then you have to include them as well. And then the pages of the newspaper, then the location where it was retrieved, if it's an online newspaper. If it's a hard copy, no issues, you just repeat the page number and you're on. So let's look at this example. An article was published by Zendrian A, 2008. And then you have to include, like I said, the month of publication. And the day of publication, in this case, is April 15. The title of the article that Zendrian published is CEO Pay Too High? Question. CEO Pay Too High? And then it was published where? The New York Times. The New York Times, this particular article, it wasn't like a hard copy version. It's actually online, so retrieved from, this is the URL. So what that means is, if you have this published online, somebody clicks on this link, for instance, it should take them immediately to your source. So you have to copy the correct locator, yeah, and paste it right there, retrieve from. With this, I mean, think about it. If you have all this information, nobody will be querying your work. They will say, did you read it? Are you sure? That's what the person said. You just say, well, let me take it that. I remember I shared in class how I went for this conference and somebody was debating and contesting some of the things. I just pulled up the reference. Okay. All right. I think I'll wind down now so that even I can go attend to other issues. But I'd like to thank you for finding the time. I've noted a few challenges, the whole thing about network, the clarity and everything. But because this resource will be available for you to look at, I don't think that's much of a problem. I'd also like you to please leave some comment if you found this resourceful or useful at all. Is this something you want us to do again? Because for me, I do lots of online stuff, right? But I want to know for this particular class if it's something you'd like to see again. So we are the 15th slide, and I have a lot more, but I do understand this evening. You just come back from work and it's weekend. Some persons need to go party and all of that. So I'll release you now, but I hope that this has been useful. And when we come back, we'll be able to quickly round up probably next week, and then we'll do. Okay, somebody says here. Thank you, Ma. Also attend to this. It's really funny. I thought you had something serious to say. Okay, great. So I thank you so much. And I know that some persons may be like, oh, it's too much. I've had to take it. Don't worry. It's easy. Once the guide is there, you're referencing the journal, you know, you're a book, you know, you just do it. Even if somebody is typing for you, you can't type. You can just give the person the guide and follow through. And if you have any other questions regarding what we've shared today, you can always reach me. You have my number, you have the WhatsApp platform, and then we can deal with it. Oh, for now, I'll say thank you. And please, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, this is the time to do so. Please subscribe. I'm really, really grateful. Thank you so much. Okay, so somebody says here, the class was very resourceful. Thank you. Thank you too for showing up. It was quite helpful, Ma. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Doctor. I really appreciate everyone. God bless you. Have an amazing day. Well, please subscribe and share it. Share it so that everybody follows, so that I can start making billions. Yeah? Yeah. I like money too. All right. Take care. Have a lovely evening. Bye.